I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing next to what I gain. Come tear down every idol so this heart won't stray. Don't let me stray. I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till.
Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome to the Threshing Floor. Here we are once again on a Sunday morning. My name is Daryl Weinberg, and I'm here with my cohort and partner in heavenly endeavors, Leonie Johnson. Good morning, my dear. How are you?
Good morning, good morning. I am well, I am blessed, I'm highly favored.
We are here to talk truth.
We're going to talk
All
truth
right.
to them one.
Yeah, that's right. Because there is a dearth of it in the world today. So, how was your week?
Yes.
Your week was a good one?
It was a very busy week. Oh my goodness. A good week, but an extremely busy and demanding week. But thank God for the Shabbat. I got a little rest,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and I'm here today. And you?
Well, we confirmed the house that we're moving into this past week after a lot of turbulence. It was quite the experience. We've been searching
Yes.
for a place for over 3 months now. So praise God that God has found a place for us. And we'll be moving next weekend. So it's going to be exciting, to say the least.
Praise Abba.
Yeah. Now we just need some packing angels.
Another miracle.
Oh, we're going to need a whole slew of them. But as a matter of fact, I just called up.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
I called up the rental company, and I was able to actually procure a truck for next Sunday morning. And being a long weekend like it is, the fact that we were able to get it is certainly his favor.
Yes. That's good. Well, he'll work it all out for you.
He will. So if my eyes are a little, squirrely the next couple of weeks, you'll know why.
Okay.
Anyway.
There's always some mystery.
Oh, yes. Well, I wanted to discuss this week here an issue that is certainly capturing a lot of news attention, but I don't think there's a lot of understanding on what is going on. And, of course, if anybody has been reading the news at all, you would know that there are protests that are happening all over the world against Israel and in support of Hamas and the Palestinians. And so, I don't know how much you've been following all of this, but it has dominated the headlines. So just wondering what your take was on it.
Okay, well, do we have 10 hours?
Only one, but we'll see what we can do.
Needless to say, honestly think that it's very unfair that people believe that or support the thinking that Israel should be attacked and not retaliate, not respond. Who in their right mind would be attacked and not respond to an attack? If someone comes up at you, even in the grocery store in the parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
and hit you or tries to fight you, would you not defend yourself? So I see that
Well,
Israel is defending herself, and we seem to have a problem with this. And that's the part I'm not getting. Why do we have a problem with Israel defending herself? I mean, should she just roll over and die? So that seems to be what people want. It seems as, or do they not realize what it is that they're wanting? Do they not realize that she is the apple of God's eye? Do you not realize that when you go up against her, that you're really going up against the Almighty God? Do you not realize that you will suffer the consequences of this decision? You will suffer the consequences of it, and it will not be an easy consequence for you to bear. Because we've seen in scripture many times where those that have attacked Israel, when the Lord comes back at them, is with brute force. So
mm-hmm.
what are we thinking here? People, especially believers, I can understand the ones who are not believers. They don't know the word. They don't know what's going on, and they're siding with the world and with Hamas. I understand. You don't know God. You don't know the word. But when believers take this position, I have a hard time with that because that tells me that you're not in the word and that you're not on God's side. Because when you do that, you're rebelling really against his order. You're rebelling against his plans, his purpose, and his destiny for this nation. So we need to really know the word and be certain of the decision that we're making because it will come with heavy consequences, honestly. But I don't
Indeed.
want to rant. So
Yeah. The fact that
you
so
wrote an
many.
amazing you wrote an amazing
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. There seems to be a delay on your end there. Yeah. Okay. Got some comments going here about the echo that you have going on. It's not a cell phone. Leonie, maybe you can try going back out and coming back in one more time and see if that resolves the issue.
okay, sure.
All right? And
Okay, no
meantime,
worries.
I'll.
I don't have any okay.
All right. So anyway, yes, I did write an article regarding this, and it was a lengthy article too. I will post the link in the comments section. And the Lord had really impressed upon me the need to write this article, and because there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of people who I think are very much on the wrong side of this. And like Leonie said, when you come against Israel, you come against the apple of God's eye. And so, not, it's understandable in a sense that the world would take this position. We get that. We'll kind of delve into a little bit more of what the origins are of this. But for so many in the church to be taking this position that Israel is somehow on the wrong side of this, and there's so many different accusations that are being made against Israel, that Israel is committing genocide, that they're colonialist settlers. And so what that means is that the Palestinians were on the land first, and they've pushed them out. That Zionism is equal to racism, and that Israel's ultimate objective, of course, which is an age-old canard, is that they want to take over the world. Now, do we have verses in the Talmud that lend to that? Sure we do. Do we have verses in the Talmud that speak to racism in the sense that Jewish people believe that they are superior to all the others, and that the Goyim are less than the Jews and need to be subjugated? There are verses that you can, in the 23 volumes of the Talmud, and I have a copy down there that you can access. But number one, the vast majority of Jewish people do not believe that way. Number two, to say that this is, how we need to be treating the Jewish people, I think is a gross error. Because ultimately what we have here, Douglas Murray, who I have just gotten turned on to recently. He is a British journalist, and he has been all over the place. As a matter of fact, he was just recently in Toronto at the Monk debate. So the Monk debates, Peter Monk was a philanthropist, industrialist from Toronto. And so they hold these debates where they have 4 people, 2 on each side, that come and debate each other. Well, last week, there was a debate on whether Zionism or whether anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And Douglas Murray has been one of the staunchest Gentile defenders of Israel through this whole thing that I have ever seen. And as I said, I just recently found out about this guy maybe a few months ago. I think the first time I ever saw him, Piers Morgan was interviewing him. And, he's talking about the war, and while you have equivocators like Piers Morgan comes out and he says, and by the way, he was strongly, he toes the government line on most issues. Okay, certainly did that through the pandemic over the past few years, and telling everybody to go get the shot. But he says that, well, Israel has a right to defend herself, but how many civilians is too many? How many children are too many? Mm-hmm. In other words, that Israel is killing. Well, number one, I don't ever remember in history where it was the responsibility of one army to make sure that as many civilians as possible aren't killed of the opposing army. And let's get one thing very straight here. There are no innocent Palestinians in all of this. Zero. None. They just recently did a poll. I don't know if you saw this, Leonie, but they just recently did a poll that said that 80% of Gazans still support Hamas and what they did on October 7th.
Wow.
80%.
Wow.
And when they rescued the hostages a couple of weeks ago and ended up killing about 200 militants, they found out that there was a journalist, his wife, and his doctor father that they had killed. They were housing some of the hostages. They were participating in the kidnapping. So, we can't say that, these poor Palestinians. Listen, do you know how many videos that I have? Do you know how many videos that I have seen where you have Palestinian parents lifting up their infants, dressing them up in Hamas gear, and saying that the highest honor they could achieve is martyrdom through jihad? They are training them from the time that they are
Born.
infants to
Yeah.
be terrorists, to love
Yes.
death, and to hate the Jewish people.
Yes.
So why is it Israel's responsibility to make sure that they're not killed? Israel didn't start this war. Oh, but this is resistance. And no, this is not resistance. To rape, murder, behead, burn alive
Mm-hmm.
men, women, children, babies. There was a 9-month-old baby that was taken as hostage and is still in captivity to this day. That child has spent the first full year of his life in captivity. And we're going to justify this by saying, well, this is legitimate resistance. Resistance to what? What exactly are they resisting? You know what they're resisting? The presence of Jewish people in the land, because the objective of Hamas, the sole objective of Hamas,
Yes.
is the eradication of the Jewish people in the Jewish state.
Yes.
So October 7th, there was only one objective: to kill as many Jews as possible. It wasn't they were going after military people. They stormed kibbutzim. They went into the kibbutzes. And they murdered people in their homes.
Yeah.
And they did it in front of their families. The idea was to invoke as much terror as possible.
Yes.
So don't tell me about the innocent Palestinians. Don't tell me about legitimate resistance. There's no legitimate resistance to all this.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's a number of other things that we have to... And this whole thing about the, Christians saying that there's genocide. There's a Turkish-American journalist, and I use that term loosely, Cenk Uygur. I don't know if you've come across him before. Have you seen him?
No.
He was the founder of a media organization called the Young Turks. Very interesting. The Young Turks were participated in the Armenian genocide that the Turkish people committed like 100 years ago, where 1.5 million Armenians were massacred by the Turks.
Mm-hmm.
So he names his organization after them. So he claims to be, he's an atheistic Muslim. So he's, culturally Muslim, but he says he's an atheist. But he is rabidly anti-Israel. And it jumps up and down and screams on these various, and I've seen him on a couple of debates, talking about Israeli genocide. Why is it that Jewish people aren't allowed to kill enemy combatants in war? Because number one, this is a war. And just because Hamas doesn't dress in military garb, they wear civilian clothes, and just because they hide amongst their civilians, doesn't mean that this is a legitimate war. So, you've got the world that is saying that there's X number of thousands of Palestinians that have died. And you know who they're quoting? They're quoting Hamas's figures. They're actually believing what Hamas is saying about the number of figures. Well, Hamas is going to lie about who was killed. Hamas is going to lie about the number that are killed. Hamas is going to lie just about everything because they serve their father, the devil, who is the father of lies. So why is I don't understand, but I do understand.
Yes,
but I don't
absolutely.
understand how it is that so many Christians can buy into this. And there are social media channels that I am witnessing that talk about the atrocities that the Jews are committing, when the number of civilian deaths, official figures, compared to enemy combatants, is by far the lowest in urban warfare in history. Israel has taken more care. They send text messages and drop leaflets into areas that they are about to attack so that people can get out. Who does that?
Wow.
Did anybody complain when Britain and the United States bombed Dresden at the end of World War II into oblivion? I mean, they flattened that city. And do you know what? the war had already been won by then. That was a message that was being sent when they did that. I mean, they just carpet bombed the city. 30,000 civilians were killed or something like that. But there was no real military purpose in it.
Right.
But you know something? So the Germans, through their aggression, had caused tens of millions of deaths around the world during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody looked at what was going on. Now, a lot of people didn't know about, the specifics because we didn't have 24/7, news feeds like we do on the internet nowadays. But there was no hue and cry about that. There was no hue and cry about the 2 atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were totally justified because they estimated that it was going to take about 1 million troops to invade Japan.
Yes.
Why should we, with an enemy combatant, sacrifice our own children, our own young men? And now it's women involved in war too. You got to remember, in Israel, men and women all are part of the draft.
Yes.
And there are female soldiers.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
It is absolutely remarkable.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely terrible that the church is not all the church, but some of them are not standing strong with Israel on this, and they really need to. Am I still
Yeah.
echoing? So distracting.
Yeah, it seems okay.
Okay. It's echoing. I'm hearing it echoing on my side. I relocated to see if it would change the situation, but it hasn't. Sorry about that, listeners. Yes, I think it's really disappointing that the church is not standing strong with Israel at this time, and not even in prayer. Like even if they were to be silent and not um, vocalize their position, at least stand in prayer,
Yeah.
because this is a serious situation, and there's just no way that we ought to be silent on it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to consider what it is that we're doing and how we're viewing this, and the opinion that we're formed on this topic. We really need to get into the word and see just how evil and how demonic this is, and the fact that these are people that have risen up. Really, they've risen up against our God,
Yeah.
and so we
Well,
should not be silent.
when you come against Israel, you come against the apple of God's eye.
Exactly.
That's Zechariah 2:8. So scripturally, God says that I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you.
Yes.
And I heard some pointy-headed, I don't even know what you call them. There was this comment that was written or article that was written or something said that only applied to Abraham. Just so.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Now, Bob says here that Israel did have prior knowledge of the attack, so Israel has a deep state too. Absolutely. And there are those, now I don't know who it was that allowed this to happen. I don't know if Netanyahu was aware of the attack. I don't believe that he did. I think it was the military. Israel has got a civil war that's going on right now with the deep state and the hard left. By the way, George Soros and Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum are funding a lot of that. Netanyahu was about to create judicial reforms because Israel's Supreme Court actually gets to appoint its own judges. It's not the government that appoints judges, it's the court that appoints its own judges. So what they're doing is they're feeding the virus of liberalism.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, craziness.
Yes.
But you have Benny Gantz, who was part of the coalition, and he resigned. And interestingly enough, that Anthony Blinken, who is the U.S. Secretary of State, a Jewish man, by the way, but is about as Jewish as George Soros is. And he met with Benny Gantz when he went to Israel last week. Well, wait a minute. The guy's not the prime minister. The guy's not even in the government anymore. He resigned. Why would the U.S. Secretary of State meet with him? Because he's their puppet. So you've got this internal conflict that's going on within Israel right now. You've got the hard left that is trying to overthrow Israel's democracy. And, you have many within the U.S. government, including Chuck Schumer, another traitorous Jew, who openly says that they want a different government. They want Netanyahu to be gone because he's not marching to theirs. Where on earth does the U.S. get the chutzpah, the gumption, the temerity to say that, well, we want a different government over here in a democratically elected state? It's the only democracy in the Middle East. And yet everywhere around the world, people are rising up against her.
Mm-hmm.
It is insanity.
Yes.
I mean, have you seen the protests of the Queers for Palestine?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Are these people not mentally ill?
Absolutely.
Okay, you are practicing a lifestyle that, were you to step into Gaza, would get you killed within 5 minutes. Israel accepts people who participate in a homosexual lifestyle, much to the chagrin of God, and that's part of the reason why they're having so much trouble. The largest pride parade in the world is in Tel Aviv.
Mm-hmm.
But as a gay person, you're safe in Israel, you're not safe in Gaza, and yet all over the world you have people who are protesting with the rainbow flags for Hamas, who would kill them in an instant. That is
ridiculous.
It's blindness. But you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. All of this stems from what Paul tells the Thessalonians is a strong delusion.
A strong delusion.
Strong delusion. So if you go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, let's look at that right now.
You're going to share it on the screen?
I could do that. All right. I have too many tabs that are open here. Where are we? All right, here we go. So we're going to share screen, and there we go. Okay. Let's pull that up. So it says here in 2 Thessalonians 2, starting in, let's say, verse 7. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power, signs, and false wonders, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because, here it is, they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence so that they will believe what is false, in order that they may be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness.
Yes.
There you have it.
There you have it.
That is the whole problem. Is that you have a bunch of people who embrace a wicked lifestyle. They love their sin. They rejected the knowledge of the truth. And so therefore God has sent upon them a deluding influence.
Yes.
Most of the Arabs who live in Israel And if you want to understand the history of a lot of this stuff, you can go read the article that I wrote. I cover a lot of details. I mean, God had me strapped to my seat and said, I want this article done. It's kind of like he did with my book. But you've got people who have embraced a wicked lifestyle. And so many in the church are rising up against Israel. Arabs in Israel love being in Israel because they have equal rights. There are Arab politicians. There are Supreme Court justices. There was an Arab Supreme Court justice that put both the mayor of Jerusalem and the president of Israel in jail on corruption. I mean, they were legitimate charges.
Yes.
Do Jews have that same opportunity in Arab countries?
No.
UNESCO says that there are 23 Arab countries around the world. And they own, or they sit on about 13 million square kilometers of land. You can see it all through the Middle East. You can see it all through Northern Africa. 23 Arab countries. Israel, by contrast, is one country, 22,000 square kilometers. I mean, it's tiny. It's about the size of Rhode Island. If you go from the Mediterranean to the Jordan, from the river to the sea that everybody is chanting about here, you can do that trip. You can do that trip in probably an hour or two. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the terrain. But it's not far. It's this little stick of land. And by the way, when God promised Abram the land, he said from the river to the sea. It was the Jewish people 4,000 years ago. Abraham's descendants through Isaac, through Jacob, not Ishmael. I know the Muslims just celebrated Eid last weekend. But when God promised Abraham the land from the river to the sea, it was the Euphrates River, not the Jordan River. So that covers all of Jordan and half of Iraq. That is land that God promised to Israel.
Yes.
So who's the squatters now? Who's the settlers now? Who's the colonialists now? You look at the history of Islam, and they swept through the entire, most of the known world. And they took over, and they kicked people out, and they subjugated them and killed them. And yet you've got people who are rising up. Now, where are the question I want to ask is, where are these protests coming from on the university campuses? I mean, it's almost surreal that they've popped up almost simultaneously, which should indicate something to you.
Yes. Of course, someone is planning and organizing these.
Well, if you've looked at the
And
tents, the tent, because they're camping out. Have you seen the tents all kind of look the same? Like they're being bought en masse. They're supplied with them. And it is a well-known fact that Middle Eastern countries, most prominently Qatar, or Qatar, however you pronounce it, but last year they donated $3 billion to U.S. universities.
Okay.
$3 billion. And that's just one.
That's just to one university?
No. It's just one country.
Okay.
You've got other Arab countries, other Middle Eastern countries. And
Right.
Qatar is where Al Jazeera is based out of. That's their propaganda arm that Israel, mind-bogglingly, only recently shut down, like a month or two ago. They allowed this poisonous garbage to be propagated in their own country for all these years. I mean, you know, the level of stupidity that Israel has demonstrated in how they have dealt with their enemies absolutely flabbergasts me.
Yes.
Just, it blows me away. So you've got these organized protests, and George Soros's Open Society Foundation, whichever one he is funding, because he's got a whole bunch of them, he is pushing all of this. George Soros, the traitorous Jew, who during World War II, with him and his father, actually worked for the Nazis. They sold their own people out. And he's funding a lot of this. But you've got other people who are funding. It's Israel's enemies that are doing this. And so you've got this explosion, and you've got members of Congress, Ilhan Omar and Rashidi Tlaib, and I mean, these are Muslim women who openly say that their loyalty does not lie to the United States. Ilhan Omar, who married her brother to get into the United States, she has openly said that her loyalty lies with Somalia, where she comes from. She came out of a refugee camp. Rashidi Tlaib, who is Palestinian, and we'll get into the Palestinian thing in a moment. I want to talk about what is a Palestinian. She is, she is adamantly pro-Palestine and anti-American. And you can see the judgment of God on the United States that he has allowed foreigners to come in to rule over them. Wasn't that the curse that God promised in Deuteronomy 28 if Israel rejected his commandments?
Wow.
That they would be the tail and not the head? Deuteronomy 28:13 says that you shall be the head, not the tail, if you obey my commandments. If you don't obey my commandments, if you start slaughtering your children, on the altar of Molech, then you will be the tail and not the head, and the foreigner will rule over you. There we go. Because the United States was founded on it was the Pilgrims, the Puritans rather, who came over and started settling first, long before the Masons came, the church, the founding fathers like Washington and Franklin and all those. They were Freemasons, but the original founders of the United States were Puritans, and they had debated that that Hebrew would actually be the official language of the United States, the new colonies. Israel was not a language that was in practice. It was a dead language at the time. It only got revived after 1948. In one generation, Israel, Hebrew became you had all these Jews coming from Europe and all these places. They didn't speak Hebrew. And in one generation, Hebrew became the official language that everybody spoke.
Isn't that amazing? It's a miracle.
Well,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, there's so many different things that I cover in the article, and we don't have time to deal with them all. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to zero in on that we should discuss that you think our listeners should really know?
For me, really, the main part is that when we go against Israel, we are going against God. And I know that there are people who believe, and it's I would say there's some validity to it, that the Lord could be using this to bring Israel back to her rightful place with him, a place of righteousness, because the country is not operating the way that he would have wanted it to. And he could very well be using this war to bend Israel's knees. However, we should not turn against Israel. And so I want to look at it more from a biblical perspective, what is taking place in Israel from a biblical perspective. Spiritually, what is really taking place in Israel, and what should our position be as believers where this war is concerned? I know that we should not be standing as judge to judge and condemn Israel.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lord is using this to bend Israel's knees, I think our position should be to cry out in prayer for Israel.
Well, do we have any scriptural evidence for that? What is God's
To
will
say that
on
the
this?
Lord is using this to bend Israel's knees?
Well, I mean that's evident. And I wrote an article, a blog article after October 7th about what happened. And first of all, that there was a stand down order. Okay, the military was told to stand. The IDF knew of Hamas's activities. Now you could say that okay, that they didn't, they thought it was just exercises, whatever. But as soon as they crossed that border, they knew. There was an IDF soldier. I saw her interviewed. She had been in the IDF for 25 years. She says, "We know when a dove crosses that border." So someone gave the stand down order. I don't know if it was Netanyahu. I do know that some of the leaders in the Israeli army are leftist. They are part of the deep state. It could have been them. And it very well could be that Israel used this as their false flag event in order to justify going in and cleaning out Gaza, which, by the way, they caused by giving Gaza back to the Palestinians back in 2005. Ariel Sharon, in part to cover up his crimes of corruption, gave back Gaza, yanked the settlers out of Gaza against their own will, gave it back, and then the following year, the Palestinians in Gaza elected Hamas, which Mossad helped set up back in the 80s. So there's a lot of blood on Israel's hands, and there are elements within the government who used the unbridled slaughter of 1,200 of their own citizens for political purposes. But governments do this all the time. Ultimately, what's the source of this? God's judgment on Israel because of their disobedience, because the Nova Music Festival. We need to understand this. At the Nova Music Festival, where there were about 300, you remember Shani Luke, the German-Israeli woman who was, famously killed? Body was dragged through the streets, and these innocent Palestinians were spitting on her and abusing her body even after death. At the front of the festival, which was right by the border, and it was interesting that the location for the festival was changed at the last minute. A lot of people don't know that. But there was a venue change, and they ended up moving it close to the border. And I think that they were being set up. But at the front of the music festival, now keep in mind, when did the massacre happen? It was on the last day of Sukkot. It was on Simchat Torah in Israel, the 7th day.
Yes.
There was a giant Buddha statue at the front of the music festival. And I had heard from a good friend of mine that the DJ was an occultist, if not a Satanist, I don't know. But, trance music is demonic. There are, rhythms and beats that get people into altered state of consciousness. I have a couple of wonderful books called The History of Music by Mark Devlin, a former DJ, that he talks about the spirituality behind music. He was a former believer, walked away from the faith, but he still understands kind of the spiritual element of things. So there was extreme wickedness that was going on in Israel. And so God allowed this kind of, as you say, it's a wake-up call. It's he's using this war to bend the knee of Israel. You know what also is happening? Is that a lot of liberal Jews in the United States, supporters of all these universities who have been funding to them to the tens of millions of dollars are now seeing the anti-Semitism rise up. And Tucker Carlson had a very good point. Now, I am completely on the other side of where he's at on this whole war. I think he is dead wrong. But what he said is that, well, Bill Ackerman, who is a Jewish philanthropist, billionaire who supports Harvard, he says, well, where were you with the BLM riots? You were still supporting this stuff back in 2020.
Yes.
So, they funded the liberalization, the progressiveness, as long as it didn't affect them, but now it's turned back on them. And now they're starting to wake up, and God is using this to wake up the Jewish people, to say, smarten up, come back to me. He's done this all throughout history.
Yes, he has.
But Isaiah chapter 40, when it talks about what our responsibility is, Isaiah 40 and verse 1 says, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak kindly to Jerusalem and call out to her that her warfare has ended, that her iniquity has been removed because of Messiah, that she has received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Here's the bottom line, beloved. It is not the church's job to cast judgment on Israel. Israel has sinned. We know that. God promised in Ezekiel 36 that he was going to bring Israel back to the land, which he did in 1948. In what? In unbelief. They weren't coming back as believers. He says, I will bring you back, and then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and then you will come to me. He said that he was going to bring Israel back to land in unbelief. It's not our job to judge. It's not our job. Listen, I'm very disappointed in a lot of the things that Israel has done. But it's God's job to do the judging. It's my job to stand in the gap. Psalm 122, verse 6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That's not a request, Leonie.
That's right.
If God says pray, if you feel like it, if you believe that Israel is right in this, we don't get invited to the planning table in the morning. I'm sorry. As God is dealing with Israel, he knows much better than us. He's been working with those, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for 4,000 years. So no matter how long you've been a believer, no matter how much you think you know about the Bible, you are still a Johnny-come-lately to this whole thing.
Yes.
Our job is to pray. May they prosper who love you. May there be peace within your walls and prosperity within your gates. God, you know what our job is to do? I'll tell you what our job is to do right now. Our job is to pray that God would forgive Israel's sins just like Moses did. How many times did Israel thumb its nose and basically give God the middle finger? I mean, let's be, as crass and crude about it as we're allowed to get here. How many times did Israel flip off God, and after he has fed them in the desert, after he has given them water, they start grumbling. God says, get out of my way, Moses. I'll start over with you. And Moses falls on... I did a preaching series through the Torah a few years ago. And I coined a new name for Moses. I called him Flat-Nosed Moses. Because he kept hitting his face as he was interceding for Israel. Right after, the grumbling and everything else. And Moses even sends Aaron into the midst of the plague after the rebellion of Korah. So God just finished dealing with the rebels. The next day they come out and said, you twisted the Lord's arm, we're coming after you. And God sends a plague, 14,700 die. And the reason why it was stopped, because Moses said to Aaron, grab your censer and go ahead of the plague and intercede. Moses constantly interceded on behalf of Israel. It is only because of Moses that the nation of Israel survives to this day.
Yes. Yes.
Our job
And
is the same.
may we have the heart of Moses, because
Amen.
Moses saw firsthand what Israel was about. He saw their hard-heartedness, he saw their rebellion, he saw their criticism, right? And
Mm-hmm.
still he would fall on his face before Abba and cry out for them. May we
Amen.
also have that heart, a heart that would fall on his face and cry out for mercy for Israel, not judgment, not condemnation. And like
Amen.
Daryl said, we're not sitting here going, Israel is innocent and she's wonderful, perfect, and amazing.
Mm-mm.
No, we know she has flaws. All of us do.
Yeah.
All of us do. But our position is not to judge Israel. I always say to people, regardless of what Israel does, I stand with her because I stand in prayer. You understand that? I'm standing in prayer. Not that I stand in full agreement with every single decision that is made, but that I stand in prayer for her. I stand as a watchman on the walls of Yerushalayim and pray for that city and pray for Israel. And even not only for Israel there in the land, but even Israel in the diaspora, because it is affecting every one of us, every
Yes.
single one of us, right? So don't think that you're not being affected by this war, right? But
When,
we
as a
also we
believer,
also have that heart like Hadassah, Queen Esther, who will fast and pray and who will go before the king. Huh?
as
Let's seek God for let's seek God to give us a different heart, a heart that hungers after Him, after what He desires, and really press into prayer and have Him direct us how we should pray for Israel.
you don't have to agree with everything that Israel does. We're not required.
That's
Listen,
right.
you don't agree with everything your husband does. That's why Milena and I have, pink and blue boxing gloves. Sometimes we got to take care of things the old fat. We don't agree with everything one another does. We don't agree with what our congregational leadership does. We don't agree with what our children do. That doesn't mean you turn against them.
That's right.
Where is
That's
this
right.
idea that all of a sudden we become judge and jury against God's covenant people who are, by the way, way older, and for the church to take the attitude that they're in the now position to judge Israel? My goodness me. You're the younger child. It was because of Israel's disobedience that you even got saved to begin with. And now you're going to take the position where you're judging? May God forgive you for your arrogance, which Paul warns against, by the way.
Yes.
He says, if God did not spare the natural branches, what makes you think that you're going to get off with being arrogant? You better go back and read Romans 11 and 9 and 10, just for context, once more. And learn your place there, Mr. Christian, Mrs. Christian. And to have someone like Candace Owens, who I respect greatly. I think she's a brilliant woman, and she is on the right side of a lot of things. Although her conversion to Catholicism recently, man, oh man, that's not good. But for her to accuse Israel of genocide, and then to talk, I don't know if you saw the interview or not, but she was on with a Jewish comedian. I can't remember his name now, but she was talking about Jerusalem, and she was talking about the Muslim quarter. Well, that doesn't sound like freedom. They're not kept in the Muslim quarter. It's not a ghetto that they are confined to. I mean, the level of stupidity, and I preached on this a few weeks ago. You can go back to my archives on Ruach HaEmet and Light to the Nations. But man, oh man, like to see all of these people who I respect come out on the wrong side of this shows that there's a strong delusion, and we as believers who know the truth need to be praying against this.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because and go back and read that article, because it puts everything in context. The whole Khazarian mafia thing, and that Eastern European Jews aren't really Jews, but they're converted Khazars. And that was written by this stupid book that was written back in the 1970s by this Hungarian-British guy, Kostler. And now you got a bunch of people saying, well, it's this, Jews aren't from Eastern Europe. Ashkenazi Jews aren't really Jews. They're actually other people, and they're part of the synagogue of Satan. This is the kind of garbage that's out there now, demonizing the Jews. It's the same old thing that's just been recycled. And one thing that Douglas Murray said in his debates, and go back and see some of the things that the pro-Israel side absolutely demolished the other two clowns, one of whom was a Jew, by the way. One of the anti-Zionism people is a Jew. Just absolutely disgraceful. But they completely demolished. And we'll end with this. That Douglas Murray said that anti-Semitism, and read my book. Chapter 9 describes where all of this comes from. It talks about where anti-Semitism originates from. It's originally satanic. Revelation chapter 12 said that the dragon was angry with the woman. But he says that anti-Semitism is a shape-shifting virus. It constantly adapts to the, what's convenient for the day. But ultimately, what you have in the rise of anti-Semitism in the world and the condemnation is Israel, is that the world is saying Israel does not have a right to exist. And that is satanic in origin. And for a Christian to be participating in that means that you are on the wrong side of this. And you would have to seriously question your faith. Because how are you going to stand before Israel's Messiah and said that you hated his people? That's not a conversation I would want to have.
Yes. And the book that Daryl is talking about is called The Red Mark on God's Forehead. You can get that on Amazon. Get it at Chapters Indigo. You can also get it on his website. Give us your website again, Daryl.
It's alttnmessianic.com.
There we go.
You see it right here underneath my name. All right. Well,
it's a great read. I highly recommend that you get a copy.
Oh, thank you. We've surprisingly come to the end of our hour. Do we have anything else that we have to say? We could do a whole other show on this. Maybe we will. Leonie, thank you very much once again for joining me this morning. It's been always a delight to speak with you. And thank you, everybody who watched. Please like and share. And go to the Light to the Nations website where you can see the blog article and look at the archives and watch the message I did on this. We've come to the end of our time. God bless everybody, and we'll see you soon.
I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again, or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lamnetwork.tv, where you can find this show and all the other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till everything is on the threshing floor.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take a tour of the lamnetwork.tv website. I'm Daryl Weinberg, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.